Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this Friday afternoon gathering. I am Tim Noah. I am here representing Humanities Team. I'm joined by the webmaster Garth Catterall. We call him sometimes the Wizard of Oz, behind the scenes pulling the strings and the digital strings. We have the communicator, Karen Gordon, who is in charge of most of the things that you read in email. And we have our special guest, Patricia Wagner. Hello, Patricia. You want to say hello as we start this?
Hello, Tim. I just want to say that it is my privilege to be here as your guest on Humanities Team. And I want everyone to know that I realize that it was your consciousness and the consciousness of Humanities Team that recognized the God consciousness in these messages from Spirit, which opened the door for me to be here today. And I am just so very grateful. Thank you.
Well, we're grateful that you're joining us, and you have some nice, beautiful things to share with us. So before we get started, I invite us all to sit back and relax. I will be having my drink of choice, which is a kombucha. It is a ginger ale, this is vintage, in a cup that says Cats on it. And if you look very closely, you will see that I'm joined by at least one of my cats who is sleeping in the back. Her name is Rachel, and she's very tired today. She must take a nap. So, as this kombucha fizzles down and as we ease into this weekend, I invite us all to just join us on this spiritual awakening chat and this discussion as it unfolds. So, Patricia, as we get started, I know we have a PowerPoint slide that you have graciously put together for us. But before we get into this and into these divine downloads that you call divine downloads, would you mind telling us a bit about your experience and your the path that has led you to here now?
Thank you, Tim. I'd be happy to. In 1977, I was a mother with 3 young children, and my marriage was dissolving. I was filled with anxious thoughts, worry thoughts, and I knew that wasn't healthy for myself or my children. But I really didn't know what to do. Well, as Spirit always provides us what we need, a magazine was delivered to our home, and the cover story was about transcendental meditation. I had never even heard of transcendental meditation at that time, but I read the article and it talked about how people were learning how to quiet their mind, and some were even finding deep states of peace. And I thought, that is exactly what I need. I didn't know of any transcendental meditation classes around, but I remembered back to when I was a little girl, and my parents would take my sister and me to the drive-in movie theater. And I would stand up looking over that front seat, which was all one seat in those days, and stare at this big white blank outdoor movie theater screen without thinking, without blinking, because I didn't want to miss even 1 second of the cartoons that they played before they played the movie. So I recreated that image in my mind, that big blank white movie theater screen. And with inner eyes, I stared at it without thinking, without blinking. And over again, by doing that, I learned how to quiet my mind. I had no idea where Spirit would bring me by just learning how to enter stillness. But it has been just an amazing, amazing experience. So the study of meditation led me right into the study of metaphysics and spiritual truth. You could find me in any metaphysical bookstore. For the first 15 years, it was an uncharted course. And then someone told me, you know, there's a church out there that believes what you believe. And I said, what was it? And he said, unity. So in 1993, I walked into my first Unity church and became a member, started taking courses over the years, then started taking them for credit, eventually became a licensed Unity teacher, eventually became an ordained divine minister. I also learned about Ernest Holmes' teachings and the Center for Positive Living, have studied those. I've studied Agape's teachings. I've learned from what Humanities Team has shared with all of us as well, and all of the other offerings that spiritual teachers give us. At this same time, I was learning energy healing. I've been teaching a very powerful energy healing modality called quantum touch for the last 16 years. And it has proven to me that everything is energy and therefore everything is changeable. Now, I want your audience to realize that these messages from Spirit, they came to me and they came through me, but they did not come from me. I did not think them up. And I have to put them into practice just like everybody else in order to reap the benefits. My life has been my laboratory where I put these practices into my life and then I see what the effects are. I love hearing and reading Steve Farrell's messages when he sends them out. And the one he sent this past weekend, he was talking about your upcoming guests, Michael Beckwith and Panache Desai. It was a wonderful newsletter. And in it, he said, Michael himself has said that God often does not always call those who are already qualified to serve, but more often qualifies those who are called by guiding them through life experiences that allow them to become stronger, more compassionate, and clear about the messages that humanity needs to hear so they can become better messengers. I teared up when I read that he wrote. So that was my background.
Well, this is beautiful, Patricia, and thank you for kind of giving us the whole story here. And it seems like you've just gone through a lot of different kind of perspectives on this whole thing, and maybe that has helped you to refine this vision. So, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear, and I'm sure everybody would hear, a bit more about this vision. You talk about these visions and being messengers, and I know I like to think of it as kind of, you go to the Barnes and Noble or any bookstore, and there's different sections. You have the philosophy, you have the science, then you have the New Age. I think there's another genre which is just called channeling. And it's all of these books that are really not authored by the person who wrote it down. It's authored through spirit. And I think any great artist or any great scientist, anybody who's had just a flash of insight, always says the same thing, in that I didn't make it up, it just came to me. So if you don't mind sharing with us what you call your two doors vision and what the teachings that have been associated with it.
Yes, thank you. That first message came from Spirit as a vision in 1999. I want to kind of preclude it with where I was at that time. It was in January of that year that a group of Course in Miracles friends, a group I belonged to, registered for a week-long sacred silence retreat at Unity Village. The retreat was in May, but it seemed as if as soon as I registered for that, my whole life turned upside down. Every aspect of it seemed to come unglued. And later I learned that's called a dark night of the soul. I can tell you that a week before I attended that retreat, a friend of mine who knew I was going through some challenges called to ask how I was doing. I remember saying to her, I am hanging on by my fingernails, and quite honestly, I don't care which way I fall. I'm glad to say that was I had never experienced anything like that before or since. It was the lowest point of my life, but that was where I was when I attended that sacred silence retreat. As soon as I got there, I walked the property. It's a beautiful place. If anybody's ever been there, it's hundreds of acres of sacred land. They've had over 125 years of ongoing 24/7 prayer. The animals are not even afraid of humans. You walk down pathways and there's deer there who are not frightened, bunny rabbits who run across in front of your path. But I found this place that I could feel the energy of the ground, and I said, this is holy ground. And so every morning before breakfast, I would walk there while it was still dark and sit on the ground with my back against the trunk of an oak tree. And I'd meditate as the sun rose in the sky. I surrendered completely during that whole week. I knew that was my purpose, to surrender, because I needed healing very, very badly. I called for God, I called for Holy Spirit, I called for Jesus, and I could see how little by little by little, that catharsis of healing that occurred was having an effect. And I was recovering, I was improving. And by the end of that 7-day retreat, I felt nothing but gratitude and joy. I knew when I left, I wanted to continue in that connected place with Spirit, with God. And so when I went home, I amped up my meditation time to several times a day and kept that connection going. And it was in that period of time that this two doors vision appeared. So Garth, if you could show that first slide, please.
And Patricia, before we actually read this, if you don't mind, we have a couple of questions in chat.
Okay.
One of them is I'm not sure if you can answer this briefly, but somebody would like to learn if you can explain how to about quantum touch, how they can learn it.
Well, that's actually a whole 2-day
Okay.
workshop.
Okay.
I don't know that I can do that.
We can reserve this perhaps for the end. But we also have another question for somebody's asking again for the location that you were just talking about for your first vision. What was the location?
Well, the location for the retreat was at Unity Village in Missouri, but the Two Doors Vision came when I went home to Florida. And it came when I was still in that connected space by amping up multiple meditation times during the day. So this is the composite a friend of mine just put together about a month ago. She said, I'm going to bring your Two Doors Vision to life. And indeed she did, with this stunningly beautiful composite. So fortunately, I wrote down after I received that vision in the middle of an afternoon. It just like plopped in. I could see everything and I could feel it, and I journaled it afterwards. And these are the words that I wrote. There was a knowing that the purpose of every life experience, every thought, every relationship, every circumstance, every moment on this earth is for realizing our oneness with God. I saw two doors floating freely above a scene whose beauty could only be described as heaven on earth. On one door were written the words, Dark Night of the Soul, and on the other door was written the word gratitude. There was a knowing that I can consciously choose the door of gratitude to become aware of oneness, or life would choose the other door for me to create that same awareness. Through either door, consciously or unconsciously, life would lead me to oneness and ultimately to creating heaven on earth. It was a powerful vision. It was a powerful vision. And I knew it was divinely sent. I would share it with the written form with close friends of mine, students who were taking my classes. I put it in the back of their notebooks. But it wasn't until 19 years later that I actually gave a talk about it and actually started practicing living in heart-centered gratitude in my own life. That occurred when I was asked to be a presenter at a women's expo at the local college. And I always ask Spirit, what do you want me to talk about? And this was the first time that Spirit said, talk about that two doors vision. And I do know there is a perfect timing for everything. Because just like me not being ready to receive the message in that vision and put it into the practice in my own life, I really believe it wasn't until a couple of years ago that we as a race consciousness were able to grasp that and put it into our lives. So here is the really the what the two doors vision reveals. I want to go over those three things. The first thing is that it reveals our purpose in life, which is a realization of our oneness with God. And the second thing it reveals is that we have choices in how we awaken, consciously through gratitude or unconsciously, as we have been doing, learning our lessons through the challenges of life. And the third thing it revealed is that no matter which path we choose, the ultimate destination is heaven on earth. And I don't know about you, but that is very, very comforting to me. So I believe our evolutionary process is for us as a human species to grow into the perfect divine idea for mankind held in the mind of God. Yeah. I asked myself, why gratitude? You know, there's a lot of talk about gratitude now. Well, not so much 20 years ago. There wasn't. But gratitude, I thought to myself, why gratitude? Gratitude, everybody can relate to gratitude. And they may not be right now in a place where they can feel gratitude. Maybe they're in a very challenging place. But I know that in their lifetime, they know what gratitude feels like. So they can relate to it. Eventually, they can really relate to it. And the other thing is that gratitude builds our immune system. It is the healthiest of emotions. It affects us physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. HeartMath, that wonderful organization, produced a paper called The Appreciative Heart. It was a scientific research study. It was written by Doc Shildray, the founder of HeartMath, and Dr. Roland McCready. And it identifies all the many ways that living in our heart, having an appreciative heart, affects us in physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Dr. Joe Dispenza, during one of his week-long workshops, did a study on gratitude where he asked participants to feel gratitude for 10 minutes a day for 5 days. He measured their immune systems before the experiment, and then he measured them on the 5th day, and their immune systems had boosted by 25%. I've been giving talks ever since that Women's Expo on living in heart-centered gratitude, been holding 7-day heart-centered gratitude experiments, and people have experienced transformational changes in their lives. I gave a TEDx talk last year, and that's available. If Garth, you want to show that, please, that next slide. If you Google Living in Heart-Centered Gratitude, it's available on YouTube, and anyone can access that. So if we can see the next slide, please. So here's about living in heart-centered gratitude. It's all about the energy. We're building this energy field in our heart. We went too far on that one. That's okay. That we're building this energy field in our heart. We're having a thunderstorm here in Florida, so you may be hearing that.
Oh, we hear the thunder.
But it's living in heart-centered gratitude, I believe, is a global change maker. It's like having a planetary thermostat that that is a whole system vibrational setting in which we create a unified field of higher consciousness when enough of us on the planet are practicing living in heart-centered gratitude.
So Patricia,
Mary, yes, go
if you
ahead.
don't mind, what would you say, gratitude, as I understand it, there are so many things to be grateful for. Now, what would you say, if anything, what would you say is kind of, what is the most fundamental thing to be, is there a fundamental thing to be grateful for? Or is it just a gratitude in general towards seemingly everything? Or is it kind of ourself? Is it God? Is it our experience? What would you say is the root of gratitude?
One thing is that living in heart-centered gratitude is a constant appreciation and acknowledgement of the source of our good. And so living in gratitude, in heart-centered gratitude, and there is a difference. I was a grateful person, but when I started living in heart-centered gratitude, boy, that took it to a whole different level, because what it does is we begin anchoring, tethering into the feeling of gratitude in our heart, and that becomes so solidified. It's our abiding place then. And so it's our center point, so that no matter what else is going on the exterior, we can stay centered in our heart in gratitude. I heard Mary Morrissey say years ago, she asked her audience, are you a thermostat or a thermometer? And she explained that if we are a thermometer, our emotions and our vibration fluctuates up and down depending upon whatever is going on in the external world. But if we are a thermostat, we set the vibrational setting, which is very powerful. The heart is the most powerful energy field in the body, much more powerful than the brain. So when we live in heart-centered gratitude, it's like I said, that planetary thermostat, where it creates that unified field of consciousness on the planet, and can be so, so transformational, first in our own lives and then on the planet.
Absolutely. And would you mind explaining for us, because you're making a clear distinction here between just gratitude and heart-centered gratitude. And I think maybe we have some idea of what this means, but if you could illustrate, what is it? Is there a visual, like, is there an experiential difference? Is it a visualizing difference? What is the difference between gratitude and heart-centered gratitude?
It is very experiential. Thank you for asking that, Tim, because, as a grateful person, I could think of things that I was grateful for, but that leaves it up in the mind, you know. So living in heart-centered gratitude, when I started doing this practice, I can tap into the gratitude by thinking of things I'm grateful for, but I want to hook into the feeling in my heart, and that becomes the most powerful thing I can do. And that's really the main difference between just being a grateful person and living in heart-centered gratitude, because we create that electromagnetic field that is so powerful, and it not only affects us, it affects the world around us.
Absolutely. And what this actually makes a lot of sense, because it's, if we have to think about something that we're grateful for, we're kind of removing ourselves from here now. We're kind of going somewhere else in our mind. Whereas heart-centered is always here. We don't have to bring something else here. And it's just the experience that is right now. So this makes perfect sense. Thank you for sharing.
My sister-in-law shared with me just a few weeks ago. She said, I've been practicing this heart-centered gratitude, and this is what I've noticed. I speak differently now to people, especially people at work. It made a difference in how I talk. And she said, I noticed too, I smile more and I feel happier. I thought that was quite beautiful.
Yeah, what else is really needed?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you want to if you want to get into your next vision, Patricia, or what you had next lined up.
Yeah, I guess we'll go ahead because I know you want to leave some time for questions at the end.
Sure.
So the next message from Spirit came 2 years later in 2001. I was coming out of meditation one morning and I asked Spirit, how can I stay consciously connected with God outside of meditation? And instantly, what I ended up calling a mindfulness practice and named it Looking for Light, downloaded. And I saw it was a knowing that the light I was seeing was actually spirit. It was actually spirit. And so the whole concept of looking for light is keeping our minds searching only for light and good and God in every situation and circumstance. And what happens is that we can see light everywhere. So I played it like a game, like a spiritual game of hide and seek, where I told myself that whenever I spotted light, it was actually spirit winking and blinking at me saying, here I am, Patricia, and here I am too, constantly reminding me that God is everywhere. I went down that very day, and as I was driving around running errands, and of course in Florida, we're the sunshine state, so there was light flashing at me because I was looking at it. I was looking for it. It was coming, reflecting off of cars, off of chrome, off of windows, off of buildings, off of signage, off of traffic lights. I was looking for it and picking it up and knowing that Spirit was saying, here I am, here I am, here I am. It produced a feedback loop of sighting light, feeling gratitude in my heart, and then joyfully expecting more light to appear, which of course it does over and over and over again. And this feedback loop lifted my energy field. By the end of the day, it was just lifted up in the vibrations of gratitude and joy. It was powerful. It was amazing. And when we build an energy field like that, what happens is that we become this electromagnetic field that attracts into our lives more and more things to be grateful for. It's quite amazing, but you really have to do it for yourself to know to have the experience and to know what it will do in terms of transforming your life.
Yes, I like this,
Powerful.
Patricia. It is powerful, and I like that you chose light because light is kind of everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
Light is something simple enough where you can see light anywhere. And but it could just as easily be, black, the color black, or a cup. Every time I see a cup, I remind myself of spirit. So you're kind of setting this template of every time I see such and such, I'm gonna I'm gonna remind myself of my divinity. I remind myself that, oh, this is heaven right now. So I like
Yes.
this tool. It's
And
very practical.
yes, yes. So light is my trigger to remind me that God is everywhere present, everywhere present. And I coupled with it an affirmation of it's all light, it's all good, it's all God. So I've done that so often, played the game and saying that affirmation, that now it's like a conditioned response, like Pavlov's dog. So that whenever I'm now in a disconcerting situation, I only have to say it's all light, it's all good, it's all God, because I know that in any situation, in each of us, the divine is there, and therefore good is there. And so it's just a wonderful tool to have in our toolbox to be able to express and be in our heart in gratitude, to build more gratitude in our life, and to see the transformational effects of playing that game of looking for light. Yeah. So that the website that you're seeing on the screen is something that I built over the course of 2010, 11, and 12 when I researched books by 50 plus mystics, metaphysicians, spiritual teachers, scientists, extracting from their texts validating quotes of Looking for Light. And quotes like from Thoreau, he says, it's not what we look at that matters, it's what we see. And from A Course in Miracles, the third lesson of the Holy Spirit is be vigilant only for God and its kingdom. And that's, that sums up Looking for Light. Be vigilant only for God and his kingdom. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I put that online, and I want to let people know that that game page that's on that website, they can click on it and download a free printout of Looking for Light right there.
Excellent. And I put a link in chat.
Oh,
Looking for
thank
Light
you.
in chat.
Thank you.
So, Patricia, we have a question from chat. Carla asks, Patricia, do you consider yourself a light worker?
Oh, definitely. I consider all of us light workers to some degree or another. Some are more ardently on course with it. I mean, like Tim, you are just full bodied into it, and all of humanity's team is. So we're not alone. And I tell you, I have been so impressed with what's going on right now in our world and in the United States, but globally. There are so many forums that have come up um, as a result of COVID, and they are just monumentally transforming the world.
Absolutely, Patricia. And I love how you're bringing in this looking for light concept with what you just brought in, how kind of these big changes that are happening right now all over universally. And looking for light, we can use this as a very practical looking for good, looking for the good, looking for the innocence, looking for the perfection. Because when we're actively looking for it, we're actually bringing it into existence. So we might as well look for perfection. We might as well look for all that is good and support the growth of this.
You're exactly right, Tim. That's exactly what Looking for Light does. It raises our consciousness above the world of appearances, where we begin to see with divine eyes. We begin to see with the eyes of God. And it's the more we play it, which it really, it is honing our mind to become more and more aware of the presence of God everywhere. And that's the answer. It really is the answer to how we can shift this planet by staying in heart-centered gratitude and living in that spiritual realm. There is that spiritual realm. And it's all a matter of us lifting our consciousness. This is a tool that can help us do that. The more we play it, the more we are aware of the presence of God everywhere.
Absolutely. And all these things that unfold, often things are presented in a way that they're presented in such a way that they're asking for some sort of negative reaction, like look at this horrible thing that's happening. But that's never the whole story. We need to this process of training ourselves to be focused on the good of things, the holiness, the God, uh, is the most powerful thing that we can do. I think sometimes sort of big policy change, or this group needs to make this massive project, but it's all in our control with our perspective, just looking for the light, looking for the good.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it affects not only us and our consciousness, but it really affects everything. Everything. We're feeding the planetary consciousness with an uplifted consciousness, a higher consciousness by doing that and staying there. But more importantly, we are just really training our mind to be in that constant awareness of God's presence. And that's so powerful. And if we couple that with living in heart-centered gratitude, oh my gosh, what a winning combination that is.
Of course, I know you brought in a bit before about being in challenging times, so to speak, and this is where the two doors becomes a tool, because even in the challenging times, it's only defined as challenging if we're not choosing the door of gratitude. So it's kind of like we have to, okay, let me choose the door of gratitude here and redefine this. This is not a challenging time. This is a time of growth, perhaps.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes. And looking for light. And I've heard some people uh, say that it's a spiritual bypass, but it's not at all. Actually, it's bringing a consciousness of knowing that the divine is in everything. So even in these challenging situations, that we know that there's good in it because God is in it. And so if we hold that perspective, what I have found is that eventually that appearance of the good, the divine in it, exposes. I mean, it just comes up to the surface because we're holding that thermostatic control, you know? And
absolutely.
and it's not also telling us not to take action, but it's learning how to take action from a heart filled with gratitude and a higher consciousness of knowing the divine is present no matter what is going on, and there is good in this. So that's what it's all about.
There is good in this. And like you said, this isn't denying facts, but
No,
it's reframing them. It's seeing them in a different way. The facts are facts, but we can choose to see them however we want. And this is the tool I believe that you're presenting us with.
yes, yes. And it's so transformative that it actually neutralizes and or corrects the 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 situation that that it appears to be from that lower frequency into a higher one.
Yes, it does. So, Patricia, I know you have a third message from Spirit. I'm not sure if you want to get into this.
Yes, let's go there. Before we put up the next slide, though, I want, if we have time, do we have time to share a little story? And I think
Sure.
it's really important.
Of course.
It's back in 1978. I was in physics class in college. Now, I had only been meditating for less than 6 months, and I hadn't had that experience of that divine connection yet, but I had learned how to still my mind. The professor handed out a test questionnaire of 10 questions. So I went through and I answered the first two. When it came to the third, it was all about determining the distance using focal points. I had no idea how to solve that problem. None. I mean, I don't know what happened where I missed that whole lecture, but I had no idea. So I said to myself, I'm going to go down, answer the rest of the questions. If there's time, I'll come back to this one. And that's what I did. And I felt really good that I had answered all 9 of the 10 correctly. So I was relaxed when I came back to that third question, and I asked it twice. And then I just sat back and relaxed with a mind that did not think. It just sat there, but it was open and receptive. And this image of the question on the physics exam came into my mind, and with it, the solution. And even back then, I knew that intuitively, if I let go of that image, I would lose the solution as well. So I just wrote down, while keeping that image, I wrote down the solution on the paper and turned it in. The next week, when the professor came into class, he started class by writing the solutions to these problems on the board. And when he got to question number 3, he turned around to the class and he said, I'm going to write a solution to this problem that I've never seen before, but it's absolutely perfect. And that was the solution that downloaded. And the reason I wanted to tell that story is because all of the answers to every question we have, all of the solutions to every problem are there in Divine Mind. They're already there. And all we have to do is relax, still our minds, be open and receptive and in resonance with Divine Mind. And so now to tell you about the next one, if you
Wait,
want.
I can't let you off the hook this easily, Patricia. So I studied physics in college, and you must tell me what the solution was because I'm
I
very curious.
I could not remember it from the moment I wrote it down on the paper and the concept went. I could never repeat it because I didn't learn it. I had nothing to attach it to in my mind because I had no knowledge about focal points. So I can't help you with that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Go ahead.
So the next slide, please, Garth. In 2015, a minister asked me to take over a class that next week because she would be out of town. And the subject of the class was God mind. So on Sunday, I was sitting in the sanctuary before the service had started, and quietly I asked Spirit, how can I explain God mind? And this conceptualization dropped into my mind. And because I had studied all of those courses, I knew all the components. Now, this one I could remember, not like that physics problem, but this one, I knew what it all meant. And so when I got home that day, I drew it out on paper. That's what you're seeing here is just a hand drawing of what I saw. And I named it the Christ Chalice. And so let me define a little bit of all of these different aspects of this conceptualization. Now, this represents the Christ mind, how it operates, and how Christ consciousness functions. This is how we are ultimately going to be actually bringing form into the world in a Christ conscious nature. So the absolute is everywhere. And I'm taking a lot of these definitions from The Revealing Word by Charles Fillmore. It's an absolute must for any spiritual seeker in their library. So I just want to mention that. It defines all these terms. So
Mind saying that again, Patricia? What's the name of that text?
it's The Revealing Word by Charles Fillmore. It's absolute must for your library. So God mind is the absolute. It's omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, infinite pure potential. So there's three phases of our mind. The superconscious mind is that phase which is the individualized expression of divine mind. It's pure. It's where we are the receptacle for receiving divine ideas, inspirations, visions, revelations, knowings. That's where we receive it in our receptacle of our superconscious mind. If we are relaxed, open and receptive, and in resonance with divine mind. And then in a Christ conscious mind, those divine ideas are imprinted into our subconscious mind, which is the operating system of our three phases of mind. It's the operating system. And so it's embedded with the divine revelations and beliefs. And then that flows into our conscious mind, which then brings those ideas, those inventions, those beliefs and thought coming directly from God mind out into the relative world, which is both physical and non-physical. And the non-physical contains race consciousness, and the physical contains everything that's material, you and me and everything that we experience on this earth. So that's how a conscious mind, a Christ conscious mind works. What we have been doing, humanity has been doing for eons now, is kind of the reverse, where we've lived in sense consciousness and used our five senses to feel into the material world and buy into race consciousness beliefs and picked up those and imprinted our subconscious with those beliefs, which are not truth with a capital T. It's not the truth. And then it recycles back where the subconscious, the operating system, then fills our conscious mind with those erroneous beliefs, and then it comes out more and more into the relative world. So anyway, that was the conceptualization. And we, as a species, are becoming conscious. We're coming into that Christ consciousness. And I truly believe that living in heart-centered gratitude, looking for light and good in God and everything, training our mind to stay in that raised consciousness awareness will actually bring us into this Christ consciousness. Or some people have other names for it, but I call it Christ consciousness.
Sure, sure. It's kind of this collective kind of super consciousness, the maybe unity consciousness, oneness.
Unity, yes, oneness, yes, that's all perfect terms. Perfect.
Christ consciousness is aligned with Course in Miracles, so I do like this. I wonder, Patricia, I see the clearly. I think we're all familiar with the power of "I am" statement here. I'm wondering if you ever considered the power of "this is," because I am. It's kind of like we're forced into kind of individuating, but this is when we make a statement. This is, we're not separating ourselves from our surroundings or our circumstance or our experience or anybody else. It's just kind of this is. And what is the this? It's kind of open for us to determine. So this is love. This is truth. These statements can be pretty powerful.
Yes, I'll have to try that. I haven't tried that yet, Tim. But I can tell you back in years ago when I was at Unity Village taking some courses, and the minister was leading us in a meditation. And when he got to the point where he said for us to silently say it to ourselves, when he said, I am spirit, I am divine, I am, I had resistance. I could feel my body resisting that. And so after that course, I really worked on myself doing that. And I'm still working on this because I'm a work in progress. And and I haven't attained this yet, but I'm working on it, and that's my goal. But yeah, so this is, all is, the we consciousness of we are, all of those are phrases that we can use to further embed in our minds and in our consciousness that we are divine.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's see here. What do we have next? I know you have some insights for us as how humanity can share these messages, because you clearly, I mean, I will say that we'll be posting this at some point to our replay page, because there's a lot to unpack that Patricia has left us with, and all the diagrams. I know some of the terms may need a rewatch. So this will be on our replay page for anybody that needs to come back. But we've been presented with these 3 messages, and I know you've hinted at it, Patricia, but how do you see humanity using these, embracing these into this awakening, into this Christ consciousness?
This is how I see it. And I'll tell you, I just got this yesterday morning in meditation. You know, Spirit tries to lighten me up because I can get very serious. So I received this, it's called the Divine Two-Step. Don't you love that? That we can dance our way to heaven on earth by the Divine Two-Step is living in heart-centered gratitude and looking for light and good in God in every situation and circumstance. That Divine Two-Step will lead us into that Christ consciousness, and it will lead us into creating heaven on earth. So I really love that. I wanted to share that with you.
I love this too.
But what I see is that these messages, especially that Divine Two-Step, it can transform the world, and it's going to need global change makers. It's going to need global leaders like spiritual leaders who can more eloquently explain the spiritual laws and principles that are embedded in these messages. It's going to take scientists and quantum physicists who can explain that level of science that's in these messages from Spirit. It's going to take organizations like HeartMath, like Humanity's Team, to encourage their members and to get the word out about doing this. And it's going to take global change makers. I saw on recently David Gershon talking about how he and his co-organizer Gail Straub in 1986 created a movement called the first Earth Day run, where the Torchlight of Peace was run around the world. It engaged 25 million people in 62 countries. And remember, in 86, we didn't have cell phones, and most everybody didn't have a personal computer. So to organize something like that, so a global change maker like that already has the experience of putting a global movement together. Can you see that happening? I can, with using these first two messages from Spirit. It's going to evolve us into that Christ conscious nature. So these virtual events are coming up, and you and I are going to co-host them. And I thank you, Tim, for saying yes to doing that. Next Monday is an actual meeting at 2 o'clock. It's part of the World Unity Week at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. And I think, Tim, you have the link that you can put in there. But if they don't have the link, they can just email me, and I'll get to that email address in a moment. But we're going to have an hour-long meeting where we explain more fully what living in heart-centered gratitude is like. It's an interactive session. And then the next day, for those who would like, we'll start that 7-day heart-centered gratitude experiment, where they will be supported by 1 email a day. All it takes is a commitment to live in your heart in gratitude for those 7 days, making that your #1 priority. And then we'll come back together on that 7th day at the same time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, at the Zoom room, for everyone to share their experience, their stories of what it was like living in heart-centered gratitude, and if they noticed any transformations that took place. And that will be recorded, and with individuals' permission, we'll use those as testimonials later on. So that's what we have coming up.
And thank you for sharing this. Again, this is all free to sign up for everybody here. I put the link for the Zoom room in chat. I also put a link to Patricia, her email address, if you want to sign up for this or the 7-day experiment. And again, this is all free, so just feel free to reach out. And it's just 7 emails that come through, and just a nice community gathering here. So definitely, I encourage us all to sign up here and join us perhaps on Monday.
So if you, I don't know that was the link to our Zoom meeting in the chat.
So I put both.
You put both. Okay, great. That's great. Yes. So, it's all optional. It's all free. So even if you can't come to the meeting on Monday, if you want to participate in the 7-day heart-centered gratitude, I just need to receive your email and name. So I think on the next slide, we have that information.
Yes, and here is the links, and I have put these all in the chat too. These are all in the chat.
Excellent. That's all in the chat, but here it is again. You can email me at patricia@graceunlimited.com, and I will send you the Zoom link and also the emails in the 7-day heart-centered gratitude experiment. You can also, here's a reminder, you can search for that YouTube of my TED Talk that I did. It's called Living in Heart-Centered Gratitude. Search for it on YouTube. And to obtain a free copy of the Looking for Light game, you can just go to lookingforlight.net, click on the game page, and then you can download it for free right there. So that's
Beautiful.
it.
And will the Monday session be recorded?
Yes, we can record that. We can record that.
So just reach out if you would like to recording. Please just email Patricia, and she'll get you the recording. And well, we have just about 5 minutes, and we have one question in chat that we didn't get to, Patricia. Karen asks, given the current climate, do you feel that the use of light as synonymous with good and truth is at all limiting or exclusive? And I think this is kind of, essentially putting light to in the absence of dark so to speak.
Okay, well, I can just speak from my own perspective. I believe, like we talk about dark matter, that's God. That's life force energy. That's formless substance of God before manifesting into material, so into creation. So I don't have in my mind, dark doesn't mean what perhaps other people associate dark with. So I don't have that obstruction, or I just don't have it. So um, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it's all light, it's all good, it's all God. When people understand the meaning of that, it's to convey that God is everywhere present, everywhere present. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, it's I think it's more of a spiritual light. It's
Yeah,
not necessarily physical light, but a spiritual shining, perhaps.
yeah. And there's one thing I want to say. I don't think there's any coincidence that we are having this interview on Juneteenth. I don't. Because I believe these messages from Spirit bring us freedom from the slavery caused by the belief in separation. And they provide us the pathways to oneness. So I just think it goes hand in hand with Juneteenth, because that's what we're all doing. It's working towards that goal.
It is, Patricia. Would you mind expanding about not everyone here knows about Juneteenth?
Juneteenth, it commemorates the end of slavery. It's a commemoration of that. Of course, we know we have a lot of changes to do in consciousness on the planet with regard to racial injustice, but it's all good. And when I see what is happening, I just know it is happening. All the people coming together, all the people working together to eliminate racial injustice is just a sign that our planet's consciousness is rising. It's just a telltale sign of that. That's how I see it. Yeah.
It is. And again, it's this separation. It, there's no exclusion here. Historically, we can look at certain things and see that things were divided, but we can't bring that into here. We have to remain in this oneness. And clearly oneness doesn't exclude anybody for any visual way, any sort of active way. And so the main thing we have to, as we're unfolding and awakening here, we can't exclude anybody from this oneness. Clearly not from visual and skin tone, but also from action. Even people condemning people, no matter who it is, this is still the separation. This is still promulgating this whole slavery mindset. So we have to be in non-judgment to evolve, to awaken. We have to be in non-judgment for everybody, not just the people who are good, for everybody.
Oh, yeah, everybody. And I tell you, Tim, just from my own personal experience, when I started living in heart-centered gratitude, oh my gosh, it opened my heart. It connected me with people, connected me with the divine. I became a giver because my heart was filled to overflowing. And it's a giver, and then started living full out in the service of humanity, where it's like working towards a world that works for everyone. And it was working in no separation. So that's what living in heart-centered gratitude does for us. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful, Patricia. And we have Sahit from Peru says, greetings from Lima, Peru. And he says, thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yes, and would you do you have any closing thoughts or words for us? Patricia, thank you so much for being here and for sharing this
Yeah.
hour of light with us.
Thank you, Tim. I would say that we can create a spiritual global climate change by doing this divine two-step and dancing our way to creating heaven on earth. Yeah. And so, can you just imagine what our world would be like if everyone's focus was held in joyful expectation for good to appear in every moment of every day? It would change our world forever.
Absolutely. So we'll be two-stepping with you, Patricia, into this heaven on earth, or in this heaven on earth, I should say. um, divine two-step. I love this. And everything that has been shared is very powerful and practical,
Thank you.
useful tools. So thank you for sharing, Patricia. And thank you all for joining us here. I believe a couple weeks we'll have our next one. Steve will be leading us our next call. And keep an eye out for your email. And heart-centered appreciation for everybody here. Thank you for joining. Love you all and God bless.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.